Ladies and gentlemen, when someone gives you a bad apology, it's one of the most frustrating experiences because you want them to apologize and they know that you want them to apologize. And they know that they could say the words and they might know deep down that they should, but they won't for lots of reasons. Maybe this person has narcissistic tendencies. Maybe this person is a very defensive behavior at the moment. And let's be honest, there's times where I just don't feel like apologizing right now. Maybe I will, but I don't feel like it in the moment. And maybe that's the same way with that other person. How do you handle a bad apology? There's two choices. You can either accept it or choose not to accept it. Too often there's the tendency to accept that apology and just move on. Just life goes on. You're going to accept it, be done with it, and get over it. Or you're not going to accept it and escalate the situation. You're going to say more things like, you don't even care about my feelings, whatever, I'm out. The fight or flight's going to kick in. You're going to say things that are more harmful and hurtful. Or you're going to want to shut down and hang up the phone or leave the room. So it's these choices that I'm going to ask you to set aside and choose a different option. There's a third option, and that is to assertively stand your ground and ask for what is yours. And that is an apology if they're willing to give. Some people aren't. But we're going to talk about that state of mind that you go into to understand, I hear what you're saying, and that's not a genuine apology. Here is what I'm willing to accept. One of the most common culprits of bad apologies is number one, the no apology. These are the type that say, well, I'm sorry if you feel that way. Ever heard somebody tell you that? I'm sorry you feel that way. And you're left standing there going, what? How do I respond to this? I'm going to tell you how. When somebody says, I'm sorry that you feel that way, you're going to respond, don't apologize for my feelings. Apologize for what you said. I'm going to say that again. The next time that somebody says, I'm sorry you feel that way. Yep. Hey, Jefferson. Well, I'm sorry you feel that. They tell you that you're not going to accept it and you're not going to escalate the situation. You're going to calmly respond, don't apologize for my feelings. Apologize for what you said here. What you're saying is don't apologize for my feelings. I got those. These are my feelings. And nobody needs to apologize for how I feel, let alone the person who has caused me harm or made the error. It should be your action that you're apologizing for. So you're calling them out and say, no, I need you to take some accountability for what you said. And you say it in a way that says, no, I appreciate the thought. You don't need to apologize for my feelings. I need you to apologize for what you did, for what you said, for whatever it is. You're flipping the dynamic that takes away the power of their bad apology. Another very popular apology is the justification apology. This is where they blame what they did on something else. Maybe it's stress related to work. Maybe it's something else going in their life. And you typically hear it like this. This is number two. I'm sorry, I've just been so stressed lately. I'm sorry, I've just been so under the gun. I'm sorry, I've just been X, Y, and Z. Whenever you hear that, I'm sorry, and they're shifting the responsibility of what they did or what they said to you onto some third party, some external factor. When you hear that, you're going to, one, listen and calmly say, you don't need to apologize for your stress, but you do need to apologize for what you said to me. I need you to apologize for what you did. You see how you flip that dynamic instead of getting more upset and saying, what are you talking about? You haven't been stressed. How about you walk a mile in my shoes and say how stressed I am. And you start comparing who's busiest, and it goes south really quickly. So whenever they blame something, it's often stress. I'm sorry, I've just been so stressed lately. I've just been so overwhelmed. Whenever you hear that, you sound a lot more calm and controlled when you say, you don't need to apologize for your stress. You don't need to apologize for the week that you've had, as if it's an understanding way to say, yeah, I get it. I'm not trying to doubt. I'm not trying to debate that you've had a hard week or that you've been stressed. Because if you start to challenge that, it's going to spiral down and it's not going to go well. Instead, you're just going to acknowledge it. Say, yeah, I understand. You don't need to apologize for your stress. I need you to apologize for what you just said. If you want this conversation to continue, I'm going to need you to apologize for what you just said, unless you meant it. And if you did, then we need to have a more serious conversation. See what I mean? A lot stronger. And number 3, another big major category of bad apologies are conditional ones. These are the ones that say, I'm sorry if you were offended by that. I'm sorry if you didn't like what I had to say. You've heard that before. I know that I certainly have. As you can imagine, between attorneys and phone calls and judges and hearings, there are a lot of bad disingenuous apologies that get thrown around, especially right after saying something that's very inappropriate or impolite at the moment. So if you hear the phrase, I'm sorry if you were offended, I'm sorry if you didn't like what I had to say, you're going to go back to what we talked about in number 1 and calmly and coolly say, you don't need to apologize for my reaction. I need you to apologize for what you just said. See how you sound much more assertive, how you're leaning into it. See, most of the time, if they say, well, I'm sorry if you were offended, you go into, well, I mean, I wasn't really offended. And you start trying to justify your feelings. You start trying to explain to them your feelings of how you meant in that moment and what they said meant to you. So often you can eliminate that altogether and flip the dynamic to saying, you don't need to apologize for my reaction. Kind of like number 1, I got that. That's my reaction. I need you to apologize for what you just said. Or if they say, well, I'm sorry if you were upset, you can respond with, it's not an if, it's a that. You hear me? It's not an if, it's a that. It's a quick way to tell them it's not. There's no if here. It's not, I'm sorry if I hurt you. It's, I'm sorry that. See the difference? Good. Now almost every bad apology has a giveaway. You ready for it? Is a dead giveaway that you can tell right away. It's not a good apology. They say, I'm sorry that you, or I'm sorry if you, they rarely, but a few exceptions, will say, I'm sorry that the good apologies will typically begin with, I'm sorry that I said that. They will take responsibility because they're using the word I. The ones that throw it back to say, I'm sorry that you know that's never going to go well in any circumstance. So you need to watch out for the case that when they say, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that you were upset by that. I'm sorry that you can't take a joke. It's never, I'm not going to say never. It's typically not a good apology. It's a bad one. Okay, we're now at the portion where I get to read a follower's email. If you're not part of my weekly newsletter, I send out a tip, communication tip, once a week, right to your inbox. And I have the ability to interact with you, and you ask questions. Ask for certain advice on things. I can give it in my email. It's a whole lot of, if you're not part of that group, it's going to be in the show notes there at the bottom. Here I have it on my other phone, and let me pull it up real quick. This is from Maria over in Brazil. Never been to Brazil. Maria says, thank you so much for your content. And thanks, Maria. I have an issue with my mother. It never fails that any time that we're at a family engagement or we are coming to visit her, she always apologizes in a way that says, I'm so sorry that I'm a bad mom. I hear this all the time, no matter what I do. I'm so sorry that I'm a bad mom. What can I say to that? There's other like personal information that I don't want to include. Maria, I'm sorry that you haven't through that. That is not uncommon for people to certain people, that they want to make sure that instead of apologizing, they want to make you feel bad for them in some way, because that's what it is when somebody says, well, I'm sorry that I'm such a terrible person. I'm sorry that you're so what they're wanting you to do, and hoping what your mother's hoping, or anybody who does this is hoping that you will say, well, I'm not so perfect, or you're not a bad mom. That's really, no, you're not a bad mom. You're a really good mom. And then they'll say, well, you never do this, you never do that. No, you always tell me I'm so terrible. And they start making stuff up. You go, what are you talking about? I've never done that. I'm not said that. You're referencing something that happened 5 years ago. They're wanting to create a structure to manipulate the situation that has it to where you are the one that apologizes to them. You're the one that needs to say, you're the one that needs to owe them something in a way because they want you to feel bad, either about yourself or the way that you've treated them, all to get you to avoid having to hear them say an apology. So when that happens, when somebody says, well, I'm sorry that you're so well, I'm sorry that I'm such a bad mom, a bad dad, a bad person. Don't take the bait. All right, Maria, don't take that bait. Just let that go. And the only thing I want you to respond with is this: I'm willing to accept an apology. Mom, I'm willing to accept an apology. Here, what you're doing is just letting go what they said, the distraction, the potential manipulation to say, I'm going to put all that aside, and I'm going to tell you what I'm willing to accept. I'm willing to accept an apology. I'm willing to accept a genuine apology that I will accept, and then that we're going to be done. It's this mindset of you're just going to stay still and you're not going to go chase what everybody else is doing. Sound good? So just understand when that happens. It's very normal. It's very common. It's just ways of trying to get the spotlight off of them and deflect, right? You've heard that. They just want to deflect responsibility. It's another tactic of doing that. They just want to send it off to somebody else, and it just happens to be you in the room. So they want to blame other people for how and why they're acting a certain way. So instead you say, I'm willing to accept an apology. And if somebody says, well, I did apologize. No, I said I'm sorry. I said sorry, there it is, I'm done. I said I'm sorry. That's not a real apology either, because they don't mean it. So what I like to do when you kind of hear that, all you need to say is, I'm willing to accept it when it sounds like a real apology. I'm willing to accept it when it sounds like you mean it. I'll accept it when it sounds like you mean it. So just understand that when you're saying these phrases of, I'm willing to accept or I will accept it, you're giving them an out. You're saying, hey, you can be out of this situation. I'm willing to accept it at any point when it sounds like a real genuine apology. And I have to make sure that I tell you some apologies are never going to come. They're not going to happen. It's not your fault. There's no magic phrase. There's nothing you can say that's going to make someone apologize. If they don't want to, they won't. You just can't do anything about that. But what you can do is to decide and reprioritize in your mind how important this person is to you. Because if they're not willing to apologize to something that is important to you, then that should be considered in a major way. If they truly do care about you and want to be in your life and want to be the better part of your life. So understand that some apologies aren't going to happen. That doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. That doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that any of the blame should be placed on you. That's just not going to happen for some people for any number of reasons, in any number of contexts. But I want to make sure that I tell you when they refuse to apologize. Don't keep digging a hole that you're never going to find water in. Don't try to force it when it's just not going to happen. If you need to, you can say, is there a chance that we can have another conversation where we can talk about how I need an apology from what just happened? And if you postpone it in a certain way, because sometimes people don't want to apologize in the moment, to say, you know, I will apologize. I'm not ready to right now. That's valid. That's a real feeling. But to totally dismiss you altogether and say, I'm never apologizing I'm not apologizing. I've done nothing wrong. I'm never going to apologize. You need to, instead of continuing to force it in pressure and make it look like you're pleading for this apology, what you really just need is an acknowledgement that they know that's really what you want at the end of the day. You just want them to acknowledge, because apologies often are really for you so that you can understand and hear that they acknowledge what they did and they acknowledge the consequences of it and those repercussions. So make sure and hold your ground. And if they don't want to apologize, that's not your fault. Bad apologies are never fun. They're extremely frustrating. It makes you want to just scream out loud sometimes. But instead, we're just going to keep ourselves calm and cool. And remember, when you hear bad apologies, go back to the mindset of where are they trying to take me and how can I bring them back to it. So if somebody says, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Number one, you're going to respond, you don't need to apologize for my feeling. I need you to apologize for what you said. If they try to make something number two, that's conditional to say, I'm sorry if you feel that way. They're going to go back to number one. You don't need to apologize for my reaction. I got that. I'll control my reaction. I need you to take accountability for what you did. And if somebody is trying to push off that responsibility altogether, understand that it's okay to just let it go and understand where that person is in your life and how important they are to you. Mad apologies, never fun. But you handle those tips, you get a hold of those tips, take them to heart. You'll be able to do it better next time. if I were trying to earn your respect throughout this conversation, if I were to want to come across as somebody that I know what I'm talking about, if I was somebody that wants to come across as being high value, what do you think's the biggest thing that I should focus on for me to portray that to you? It's a feeling, and that feeling is warmth. If you really want to portray confidence, there's the temptation to feel like you need to be right in their face. Hey, high energy, high impact all the time. That does not convey confidence right away. It conveys desperation. It might convey eagerness. It might convey too much. So where somebody's just, you're sitting with me or with anybody and you come on super strong, that might throw off the equilibrium of the conversation where it's going, oh, this is too much. I'm just getting to know you. So it's much more easier if you think about the feeling of warmth and what that is and how that sounds and how that resonates with you. So if I want to portray confidence, it's to slow down my words, to make sure that I don't uptalk with them. It's to make sure that I am pausing correctly with you and making eye contact and having that intention. I'm not looking around the room. I'm focused right with you. My chin's up. I'm not looking down. My shoulders are back. And I'm just wanting to engage fully with who you are and who I am, and making sure that we match the same frequency rather than coming in hot and heavy. Why do you think people come on too strong in conversation? A desire to be loved, a desire to be liked, a desire to feel like they are special and they're different from somebody else. It's just overcompensating most of the time. If you're wanting to project high energy, it's different. If you're performing in front of a whole bunch of people, you're speaking to a bigger audience. Got it? You need to have that energy because it has to be spread over a much bigger number of people. But if it's just one person, you don't need to come on that strong. It's much easier just to meet them where they are. In other words, I don't have to come parachute into the conversation. I just need to walk up and shake your hand, and they need to feel that in your voice and your tone and your tenor and how that operates. I mean, I've noticed with myself that the lower my self-esteem was at the time, the more I needed to fake it in a conversation and try to show up in a way that wasn't who I was, because I was so miserable with the person that I was. I felt that the other person would automatically know that there was something wrong with me because of the way that I was feeling. And then what I realized is, most people aren't really paying attention to that. You actually look more unconfident when you're trying to, fake it to somebody throughout the course of a conversation. Like, I'm wondering, I know for me, it helped me a lot to work on myself through other mechanisms, fitness, my relationship to myself, my personal relationships, purpose, and so on. That allowed me to be able to, I think, sit here and be able to have these conversations like this. Do you think that for you personally, is that the way to appear more high value, high level of self-respect, etc.? Or is it just exposure therapy through practice, through having conversations like this? It's a comfort with yourself. Exposure helps just by repetition. You can only know so much. It has to have application, but it comes from within. I see this a lot of time in a jury trial. So as a litigator, I go to court, and often I will have a witness, or I'm cross-examining a witness who is trying to be somebody they think the jurors and the jury want them to be. Maybe they need to portray sympathy, hoping to gather sympathy from the jury. But people have a sixth sense about them. We can just tell. There's no way to really put words to it, but it's very easy to go, that person is not being true to who they are. Something is off. I can't describe it, but I can just feel it. I can hear it. You know it when you see it. And so there's that temptation to be something different than who you are, but that typically draws away. It rarely, if ever, gives you the outcome that you want. Authenticity is being exactly who you are on the inside as you are on the outside. It's leave the window, fronts for shopping, but don't make it your home base of who you are and your personality, because eventually it's going to either hurt the relationship that you're trying to have, which is based upon a falsity, or it's going to eventually grind you down, because after a while it's just going to be friction, and that's going to have a rub, and that's going to get worn, and that's going to be hard to, you're going to have that identity crisis further down the road. Much better to be who you are now. We often have that problem with overcorrection, right?
where if we're feeling a lack of self-esteem, we want to overcorrect it by trying to portray that we have a higher level of self-esteem than we actually do. And people can pick up on that right away. But I will say, I think on the opposite end of that, like I can tell a lot by somebody when they shake my hand. If they have a weak handshake, I can just tell like they're struggling. They got something going on. They have a low level of self-esteem. Maybe this is me overgeneralizing, but for the most part, that's just maybe my perception and my bias. And people who walk with and looking, at the ground when they're walking, because I did all of that and I wasn't very confident. So do you think in situations like that, where people are feeling less confident, passive, they're maybe not an extrovert, but they're trying to appear confident? How, like in your experience, like what's the best way for somebody to bridge that gap so that they're not turning somebody off by being too passive, having a weak handshake, looking down, but they're also not coming out as this over-charismatic person, which can be easy for people to pick up on right away. It's a balance, and that balance is specific to context. It's specific to the situation in a lot of different factors. There's this fear, and it's a type of psychological threat of identity, and that makes you question, what if they don't like me? What if they don't like who I am? Is who I am enough in this moment? And that causes you to have maybe not the weak handshake, but it causes you to feel down, to have that negative energy. Whereas on the opposite end, if you're always needing to be the person to say something often, the person who says the most knows the least. You've been in those boardroom meetings, and the person who's always chiming in is typically the person who's least connected with what's going on. But the confident person, the authentic person, knows that they don't have anything to prove. So the advice is, understand, you have nothing to prove. Your value is exactly what your value is. You don't dilute it by saying too much. You don't undervalue it by not saying enough. So it's this understanding of, I don't have anything to prove. Not with my words, not with my actions. I know exactly who I am, and that allows you to be able to use pauses more effectively. It allows you to have stronger conversations, because less is often more when your words are more concentrated. When you say less, confident people know they don't have to have an answer to everything. They don't have to say every little thing that comes to their mind. The person who's the most knowledgeable in the room, typically in that board meeting, is the one who says the least. And so it's always the reverse of what we originally think. As any new debut author, I, for good or for bad, have been looking at reviews online, because you want to know, are people going to like the book? That's the whole, you get very nervous. Are you going to deliver on the message? And the reviews have been so kind and wonderful. And there was one that hit me yesterday that I randomly saw that I wanted to share with you. It's very short. I know you can listen to it, just bear with me. I know you can do it. Listen, you are not a target. I was once told by my husband, you are an easy target. And everyone knows. Time and again, I walked away defeated, even with my children. Jefferson showed me what I lacked was communication skills. From his social media, I started applying these answers to difficult situations. Let me be clear. This is not a book of his social media quip. That's what I thought it would be. No, it is learning to understand where people are and to adequately communicate with them. It's teaching to deepen relationships by way of strong communication skills. You are not a weak person for purchasing this book. You are strong and courageous for recognizing there is a better way to bridge a gap, create healthy boundaries that work, to not get sucked down a rabbit hole, to not think you've lost your mind. I highly recommend, and I'm starting my second read through. Kindle edition is an easy read. Bless you, Jefferson, for exhibiting love for people. I was just taken aback. I was totally blown away by this. I have no clue who this person is. In fact, they didn't even leave their name. It just says, verified purchase. This is my point with this is, I want you to know where to go in your mind when conflict comes your way. You are not a target. And if you felt like you've been your whole life, this is where it stops. Rule number 1 in my book. There are 3 rules. It's rule number 1. Say it with control. Number 2. Say it with confidence. Number 3. Say it to connect. And the whole focus of rule number 1 is you can't say anything about what I teach you, whether it's my phrases, my quips, my little words, everything that I can give you. None of it matters if you do not say it with control, if you do not first regulate yourself. So we're going to talk about, in this episode, what I want you to think about when conflict comes your way. Anytime that somebody says something that you weren't expecting, your body naturally, through its biology, reacts. People think that fight or flight is something that has to happen when you come with physical contact. No, that's not true. It happens every day in these little micro moments. Even when somebody just flatly disagrees with you, when somebody disagrees with your opinion, or they say something you don't like, or they call you an ugly name, your body goes, "Hey brain, I didn't like that." And the brain goes, "Give me a second. Yeah, no, we definitely didn't like that." And it naturally reacts. You have a scowl on your face. You want to say something back. You get heated. Your neck and jaw get tense. All biological, all normal, all natural. So what do you do with that? Rule number 1 in my book is you use your breath as the first word that you say. And the reason why is because it adds distance between what they say and how you respond, which gives you time to regulate yourself, to think of the quips that I give you and the sentences I give you. And it also the other benefit is it allows the other person to calm down theirs as well. Gives time for that analytical side to take over. Every day there are little things that tell your body, I am threatened. Somebody cuts in front of you in traffic. Somebody merges. Somebody's riding on your bumper. Your body goes, I am threatened. That's where road rage comes from. I feel threatened. In this environment, when you're talking with your kids, when somebody says something to you that they disagree with your opinion, they dismiss your idea, you don't like that, your body's saying, hey, that feels threatening to me. I want you to do something for me right now. Now, if you're driving, don't worry about it. If you're walking on the treadmill, don't worry about it. You can do it later.